No. And we're live. Hello, folks. Sorry, we're just getting everything connected up there, making sure I've got some juice and cough, having a good slug of cough medicine. So here we are once again. It's a Saturday night. It's a really stormy, miserable night here. And let's see, we just click this over to the live chat and do check that we've got a level. I think. Oh, I'm going to bring the microphone down. Keep doing that, don't we? There we go. And hopefully that should be a little bit better. And there we are. So thanks very much for joining us. If you're just arriving in the room there, folks, say hello. Tonight's episode is all about the sandworms. There's Brad, straight in with the sound. Brad, thank you very much. The sound is good. How's it going, Brad? It's a miserable night here, really stormy, really, really wet, really bad visibility out on the roads, etc. Horrible night. Ether Prime says, hello, Ether, how's it going? So I hope you guys are all well and everybody else joining us. Sound check's good. Thank you. We're getting better at this, aren't we? Bound to still make mistakes and cock it up somehow, I'm sure. That's just life, isn't it? So there we go. So as usual, folks, if you have any questions about the sandworms, I know we covered a lot of this stuff last night because really we were having a look at the ecology of Arrakis, and fundamental to that is the sandworms. Excuse me. Still bunged up, but sounding a lot better today, I think. Curse you, Brad. It's a beautiful sunny Sunday morning here. Envy you. Yeah, nothing but, yeah, it's all rainy and misty from now on for us here, I think, until the snow gets here. Ether Prime says, honestly, I think this episode might answer a lot of people's questions. Yeah, we were having a look at, as I said, we were having a fair chat about the worms yesterday, and they do present a fair amount of mystery. We've got a fair amount of stuff referenced there. As I said, I did a full read through just really to get a sense of the worms. As you could hear me say in the episode, and we talked about last night, trying to figure out where are the worms from, what's the mystery. No answer, sadly. But we have a lot of information about the worms spread throughout the first 5 books, and a little bit in the 6th book as well, I think. Excuse me, the throat's really tickly tonight, folks. Let me just see if I can get a bit of a better throat on me. I'll go with the black currant juice, I think. Get those precious fluids there. That's a bit better. But yeah, so there's a fair amount to the worms. And of course, we have that in terms of what happens to the planet and the changes that happen to the planet, and that the worms are, of course, we find out responsible for whatever has happened to Arrakis. And yeah, the whole process of even Leto becoming the worm, and then I suppose that process of Leto becoming all the different worms again with that pearl of awareness. So there's a lot to talk about the worms. Let's see if I can get a good clear. Sorry, I hate the noise of me always coughing on this, folks, but I did pick a time to do this when I had a cold, I suppose. But yeah, Ether says, I agree, the lamprey is probably the closest competitor. Yeah, it's in terms of how the worms look, it's very similar, but love the daily Doctor Strangelove reference. Always got to keep up those precious bodily fluids, Brad. Yeah, the lamprey is really bang on, I think. We have quite a lot of evidence for it. And as I said, we showed you in the episode a life cycle of the lamprey. I've got it in the big photo of it in the big book here, and I think I put it up on the community part of the YouTube channel as well, so you can take a wee look at it. And within the cycle, the cyclical pattern of what we know about the worms, if you look at the cyclical nature of the lamprey, then they really do fit quite well. Yeah, very, very similar. So it's an interesting animal, actually, and I quite enjoyed reading up about it. I think it's a big problem up in the Great Lakes in America. And yeah, it's a very interesting animal. There's one of the Dune artists. Now, who would he be? Who consistently, the person that does these covers here, I think, these worms. Let me see. I hope I can tell you the name of this artist because I think he's really good. I do. No, it's one of those. I hate a book that uses an artist's work on the cover. In fact, the all of these ones go together, don't we? I think I have a picture of them at some point, and maybe somebody knows this artist. But I think his drawings of the worms are quite similar to the lampreys in some ways. You know. Oh, I wish I knew. I have referenced them somewhere in the videos. But if you have those covers, they all run together and make a big picture. I think you know. Yeah, so the lamprey, the big mystery, guys, that whenever I was doing this research was, as much as that's the animal part of the worm, I find virtually no information on the supposed plant half of the worm. It's meant to be a plant animal hybrid. So that was something that turned up to be, as I was working away at it, looking at it, and I was conscious that as soon as I found out the fact that the worm's a plant animal hybrid, I kind of started investigating that path. So the road down to the lamprey and a few other candidates was quite straightforward, but nothing really reveals itself about the plant vector, if you see what I mean. And I'd argue that that's got something to do with the nature of the digestive system of the animal and the kind of factory that it has going there that produces this wonderful nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide mix. Um, the worms are fascinating. If we start breaking down the worms and what they do, how they operate, they're incredible. They're absolutely bonkers. Ether says it shows his creativity in turning an aquatic invasive species and turning it into the same yet exact opposite environment. Yeah, I think I was saying a wee bit about the dragon in the sea, Ether, that it seems almost a trial run in some ways for Dune, and that there's lots of elements that are in that book that are kind of gleaned from his work on the deserts. I think on the barrier grasses, that journalistic article. So yeah, you could a lot of that's in water, and the submarine itself is a hermetically sealed environment that's contained inside another environment that's fatal to the people there. There's lots of things from the Dragon in the Sea that very quickly transpose over onto Dune. You know, just taking it from water environment to sand environment. And if you think about Atreides from water to sand, um, I genuinely think if you read The Dragon in the Sea, having a good knowledge of Dune, you will go, oh, it's interesting. Ether Prime says what we're talking about. What kind of plant? That the sandworm, it's two parts. It's plant animal. What kind of plant? You suggested possibly a fly eater. They react to vibrations. Like a Venus flytrap. Yeah, interesting. As I said, that's the one thing, guys. It's totally open to speculation because I could find nothing. I was just looking at any wee notes I might have had, and I've got a copy of the Ph.D. here next to me with the diagrams if I need to refer to them tonight. But there's nothing on the plant side of it, so that's an interesting one. It's just total mystery. So yeah, the worms are pretty much we could chat about the worms all. I think we could chat about the worms for about 3 or 4 days. To be honest with you, Ether was saying, I think yesterday when we were having a chat, we think we covered a lot of stuff about the worms. I think we haven't covered the half of it, to be honest. There's a lot to them, and again, what's in my PhD, you have to remember, I had to pull an awful lot of stuff out of this, but the fact that they're an introduced vector, and it's the sand trout that once put on a planet, basically go for the water on this planet, insist it, cut it off, and get rid of it. And it's only when the water's gone do they move on to the next stage of their life cycle that they can go on to the sandworm phase. So I'll be honest with you, they sound like an ecologically designed weapon to me, a biological ecological weapon. That's if you think about what, unless you can argue that they're actually created to create, that their use is to create spice deliberately. Arguably, then you could maybe simply see spice as a unexpected side product of a biological weapon. Who knows? We've talked about possibly the worms coming from Earth, and because we don't hear too much of Earth in the books, So let's just see. Ether says, if you research the life cycle and biology of a Venus flytrap, I believe it's a good fit. Ah, excellent. I will have a look at that. That was the thing. I had no obvious pointers, if you see what I mean. No, there's a hint that it could be this plant with possibilities for the worm itself. There was definitely directions to look at. So sadly, yeah, nothing about plants or what possible plants. So yeah, it's a good one to speculate on, and being sensitive to vibrations. Yeah, that's an interesting thing about the worms as well. Brad says lamprey references always get me thinking of the Lard cover album. So the Lard album cover, The Power of Lard. And I'm going to have a look at that. And Al Jurgensen's Ministry. Lamprey. Oh, I think, are they lamprey heavy? I suppose people would think them as people would think of them as being quite horrific looking. I suppose, you know, it's that kind of thing with certain animals with teeth like that. The Power of Lard. I've got to look at that. Bear with me 1 second. The Power of Lard. Oh, gotcha. Right. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah, it's very Dune, isn't it? And that's a lamprey. I've not seen that one before. Cool. Yeah, indeed. Thank you for that. Excellent. The inversion thing runs deep in Dune. It does. It's all over the place, and it's very much part of his pairings and opposites and stuff. It's a full run. There's a lot of dichotomies in Dune. Excuse me. And again, it runs with a lot of his pairings using the Jungian archetypes and stuff like that, you know. How a Venus flytrap knows to close is it senses the vibrations of an insect and has a time delay between noticing the vibration and snapping closed and then digesting it. Is it Spannungsbogen? Isn't that the word? So it's a bit like that, isn't it? That point where the desire for a thing and hesitating before reaching for it. It's kind of quite an important trait of the Fremen, isn't it? I believe in Dune. That is interesting. I was thinking about the vibrations of the worms, and if you think about how they digest stuff, and I had a wee thought about the way we have these wee thought exercises, if you like, and I was thinking about when we talk about the worms are attracted to vibrations. And I was also thinking that the word Arrakis is meant to mean dancer in Dune, and that worms will eat thumpers. So if somebody plants a thumper, the worm will and eat that thumper, and that's the whole point. It's diverted to the thumper. And I was thinking, oh well, then the worm's got the thumper inside it. Wouldn't that drive it nuts? But then I was thinking, no, a thumper's easily digested. So the thing I was wondering about, guys, was if they talk about when nobody wears a shield in the open desert, it's suicide. It attracts every worm in the area. And I was thinking, well, what do the worms do to something that's shielded? And I'm assuming that they would eat it. And I was wondering, how does a worm digest a shield? Or would that vibration still going off inside it not drive it nuts? I don't know. It was one of those unexplained things. I've seen a snake with something's gotten inside the snake, if you see what I mean, a parasite, and the snake just going bonkers, absolutely bonkers. Quite a horrific thing to look at, actually. Yep, it has to allow insects to get fully into the trap to suffocate, and then begins the digestive process, I suppose. It's interesting. Brad says they must be able to breed before they become full worms to be able to sequester so much water. Yeah, again, let me just grab this. Oh, just to check here. So, in terms of the wee quotes in there in the video, but I'll just read it again for you guys if it helps to refresh your memory. It'll help refresh mine. I think if you look at the diagram, by the way, there's sometimes I think Herbert's terminology slightly changes. And I go with his no matter what. That's in the big kind of flow diagram. But now they had the circular relationship. Little maker to pre-spice mass, little maker to Shai Hulud to scatter the spice upon which fed microscopic creatures called sand plankton. The sand plankton, food for Shai Hulud, growing, burrowing, becoming little makers, and that's that cyclical worms. Cyclical life cycle of the worm. Cyclical life cycle. Listen to me. The life cycle of the worm. Sorry. Now, that's not what you're asking about, Brad. They must be able to breathe before they become full worms to be able to sequester so much water. I thought that they had 3 hairs in the center and 2 have to be touched to trigger the closing. Oh, is that? Oh, I thought that was about sandworms you were talking about, brother. That's. I take it that's Venus flytraps. You see what I mean about me losing threads? Oh, I had something that I thought was going to help me here. Let me bear with me a second. Toggle timestamp. There we go. That's I figured out that I can put timestamps up on everybody's little bits of conversation here in the live chat. I just figured, when I lose track of things, it might help me. Oh, that was about 2 minutes ago. It might help me backtrack and find things a bit easier. So we'll see if it does tonight, I suppose, folks. Let's have a wee look. So, Sandra, absorb available water. And is there still the little flow chart? If there's not, they just keep at that process. And once they have absorbed all available water, then the sand plankton enter a hibernation stage, which we take to stunted sandworms and sandworms. It's a complicated wee diagram, to be honest, and as much as it's not the way I would normally do one of these kind of things, and as I said, there's a copy of it. Oh, if you can see that. Oh, there we go. Take it in a bit closer. But there's a copy of it up on the community section of the web page, guys, if you want to have a look at it in detail. And it really is just it's a mapping really of what Frank gives you. That was all meant to be written out and part of the work that you're listening to and seeing. But as such, because of the word length restrictions, it all had to go. And simply put, it all went into that. Would you believe it? All of it went into that one diagram. So it was worth doing. I suppose not quite how I wanted to present the information, but it was the only way I kind of could get away with it. But there we go. So if you've got any questions about the worms or their life cycle or anything to do with that tonight, of course, we've got a god emperor who becomes a worm as well. Excuse me. And let me see if I scribbled anything down here about it, anything of note. But oh yes, and it's really the full realization of how, if you want to know that moment who figures it out, where do we see it, get the entire kind of gist of what's happened to the planet. As I said, it's in this episode, and it's the moment when Leto II in Children of Dune uses his other memory to kind of see what has happened. There we go. We're getting a bit of a biology lesson on the Venus flytrap. Either saying, no, the hairs don't have to be touched. They are how it triggers its sense of motion. So they don't actually have to be touched, but they can sense vibration. The heat inside the worm may be enough to destroy the shield, says Brad, and they would be slow enough to pass through the shield. Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting, especially I like, again, I've seen the shields in the new Dune series, the new Dune movie, but I really, really like the big chunky ones from David Lynch's Dune. I absolutely love the shields in that. I don't know, there's something fantastic about it. So I always imagined a worm eating one of those and then just having it going inside a worm, Ether saying also is this the Venus flytrap again? That is a plant common in nutrient poor soil. But we've got quite a variation in the size of worms within the Dune universe as well. And I think you got a wee bit of one of the criticisms there from is Adam Roberts, who would be a science fiction critic, and he found it just the idea that the worms fart oxygen, if you like. He found that was the thing. I think he finds that quite absurd. I found it not altogether helpful in the argument. But so in a sense, the worms kind of are are the replacement for the I suppose the plant oxygen cycle that should be on the planet. And so they're the explanation for why there is actually a breathable atmosphere, etc. Is pretty much that they fart out this stuff as a product of their digestive system. Um, Ether saying that oh, that's interesting. Ether saying that they also produce a cocktail of digestive enzymes. Um, as the worms have these kind of aldehydes and acids inside their stomachs that make this kind of digestive factory. And this is basically, as I suppose they fart out oxygen and stuff, and they also excrete the pre-spice mass, I think. Um, yeah, so the worms are kind of fully integrated. They're a full part of it, and we have to kind of wonder what's the whole thing about melange is another. So there's waste. There's multiple waste products of the worm, if you think about that. Um, and it talks about the nitrogen oxygen CO2 mix. We don't know how much of all of those gases are being put out by the worms. Um, but they're also putting out, and again, it's their excretions make part of their life cycle. And we also get this byproduct of melange, which, what an incredibly useful yet dangerous drug it is, you know. But I was saying when I said the heat could destroy the shield, I of course meant the shield generator. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. The shields are a bit, if you think about the shields, they can be a bit, I don't know, um, they could be a bit tricky, especially if you couldn't turn it off. If you see what I mean. But the whole, yeah, I don't know, kind of reminds me of those kind of things. You know, I don't know, but if somebody dies wearing a shield, you know, how do you turn it off? This kind of thing. How good's the battery on it? That kind of thing. Mm. But it's, I suppose, why do vibrations drive the why in particular does this technology drive the worms absolutely raving mad? I suppose, I mean, we're told they're attracted to rhythmic vibrations, etc. But they don't go nuts when they're going for a thumper. They're just, oh, there's a thumper. I'm attracted to that. And why are they attracted to it? I suppose is the question. But when it comes to a shield, it's not. Oh, there's a shield. It's they're completely. You get the sense that they're tormented by it and so angry. It's interesting. I got to stop saying that word, don't I? But I think interesting is a great word for just getting you through so much nonsense sometimes. It's a good shield, if you see what I mean. When I said the heat could destroy us, yeah, so I just read that. Ether says, considering we guessed that they came from Earth, we can guess about lampreys as their animal component. Why not? Yeah, Venus flytraps were very popular in his age and likely capture his imagination. If it didn't destroy the shield, oh, and then Brad saying if it didn't destroy the shield or thumper for that matter, they could code it a la Pearl wormhole. Interesting. There you go. Yeah. What is interesting, Ether? It's a pretty good pairing. There we go. We have the lamprey with the Venus flytrap, you know, and we can maybe ask people out there. What do you think is a good pairing? I couldn't possibly comment on a plant half. I wouldn't have that kind of knowledge. Um, to me, it would be just an amused speculation. I'd have to think about what plants are groovy and etc. But yeah, the Venus flytrap. So it's got the kind of chemical enzymes, etc. The digestive factory. It's got the. Oh, sorry, you have to get Matthew. Yeah, okay, no worries. Sorry, it's just my wife letting me know she's heading out there. That means I've got to keep an eye on the girls, the dogs. Yeah. Let me see. I don't know. Yeah, if anybody's got any ideas about that, but I think that's not a bad. That's pretty good thinking, Ether, actually, in terms of what kind of plant would the worm be made up of. Does the Venus flytrap have any interesting byproducts? You see, there you go. There's possibly your component, wouldn't it? Would the plant aspect of it, Ether? As much as that's a pretty good one. should we also think about plants that are going to deliver psychedelic, you know, that have kind of some psychotropic nature to them? Because again, the byproduct of this sea lamprey with its cycle, if you like, and possibly, the Venus flytrap, we need a byproduct for our animal that's this ubiquitous drug, don't we? It's quite that's very interesting. There's quite a few species like, isn't there a number of species like the Venus flytrap ether? Maybe you know a bit about this, but that's just the really famous one. Is that the case? I'd imagine there must be other similar species. So there we are, folks. We're talking all things sandworms tonight. There's so many different places we could go with the worms, and I think one of the ones I think is interesting is a lot of people would comment about. I think commenting about Islamic themes in Dune, and I think that Dune's riddled with Islamic themes, and but the suggestion sometimes it's brought up is that the Fremen are Muslims, and as I don't see them like that. As much as I see that the main faiths that they have are Zen, Sunni, and sort of, is it Zen, Sunni, sort of Zen Buddhism and Sunni Islam. The other thing about them is that they worship the worms, which that's not Islam. So this is a chthonic deity that the Fremen worship. And as I said, large part of their religion is based on Islam and Buddhism, but we have this dualistic chthonic deity that they worship, both Shai Hulud and Shaitan. Hence the desert dust devil and god, as it desert god and dust devil of the title of this episode. And I think the whole use of it, I think it's interesting the way that Herbert brings many aspects of Middle Eastern culture, Middle Eastern religions, and the desert itself into Dune, but he's still mixing it up with lots of other things, and different types of cultures, different types of myth. And as much as I think we talk a wee bit about Leto II being, there's a lot of the kind of Abraxas idea. I think we showed an Abraxas coin from the third century, with what basically looks like Leto II, the God Emperor, on it. Maybe it's fallen through a hole in time, but we have this the chthonic nature, and chthonic applies to earth deities of the worms, and it makes them very similar to kind of the worship of Crom Croch. I'll type this down. I'll type it in for you, by the way, so you can, if I can remember how to spell it correctly, not get it mixed up with Conan's Crom. I think you first. I think that's it there, folks. Crom Croch, which is a worm deity from Irish mythology. And so there's a sense of that. This the chthonic nature of the worm worship itself. The fact that somebody pointing out how useful the worms are, but the Fremen not only worship them, get this wonderful drug out of them, this life-preserving drug, etc. All of these things that they get from the worms, but not only is it their deity, but they also use it as a form of transport, which I think is brilliant. If you think about it, that they can hitch a ride on their god, if you see what I mean. Quite bizarre in some ways. Let me just catch up a wee bit here, folks, because we're doing a wee bit of speculating on worms and shields. Ether is just that there are many families of carnivorous plants. Thank you, Ether. Most of them are cups. For example, they lure insects in with a sweet nectar like a Venus flytrap, then close, trapping the insect inside. So there is something to entice some kind of the sweet nectar. Sean McCall, hi Sean. Ether, is this a theory that the worms were an engineered product of a group of humans in the Dune universe? Says Sean, or suggesting Herbert's inspiration. Nectar of all, I'll just catch up with that, Sean, in a wee second. The nectar of all carnivorous plants would be compared to spice as a lure for prey. That either we can get a picture of plants in the sundews that are same niche as Venus flytraps and are found in sandy coastal peat bogs. Interesting. Let's be, Frank Herbert idea of the sandworms that they were an animal plant hybrid. I'm speculating as to which one. Yeah, very interesting. So, Sean, we were running with the wee idea that I had suggested that we're talking a few things about the worms, but one is that they're a plant animal hybrid. The other one, most importantly, is that they're not from Arrakis and that they were introduced there, and that Arrakis was quite a nice planet once, and it's the sand trout vectors that are introduced there that turns the planet into Dune. So we were just saying that my own research led me down a certain path to look at what animals, etc. And based on what Frank tells us, we know it's a plant animal hybrid, and that the animal that we think is closest, based on my own research and what we've looked at there and what we've evidenced, is the sea lamprey, which has a very similar life cycle. So we were speculating about what's the plant side of the vector, if you see what I mean. Pardon me. But so the other part that we've been discussing, I think we had a wee chat about this last night, is where do the worms come from? Is one of our mysteries in Dune that I did a full read of the whole Dune series to get the answer to that and to understand the worms specifically, not just going everywhere and looking at the worms. So we don't know is the answer, and excuse me, Earth's not mentioned too much, and we get a sense that something bad has happened to Earth. And if they are in fact some kind of hybrid animal, we can theorize that they're created in a lab, and if that type of animals from Earth. So it was kind of about speculation that it's another one of the mysteries that we don't know from the Dune universe that Frank doesn't tell us. And they're kind of, where do the worms come from and what's going on with Earth? And if we start thinking about it, and again, a lot of the names of characters are quite suggestive in Dune. Excuse me. But we're talking about genetic engineering, gene splicing, that kind of thing. And so the suggestion, it's my own opinion is that we could speculate that it happened on Earth and that they were sent from Earth to Arrakis for some reason. But it could be suggested that maybe the worms, why isn't the Emperor of 1,000 Worlds, why isn't his throne on Earth? And we're not too sure what, but Earth's only mentioned once, I think, in the Dune series, if I can remember correctly. And so the suggestion was that perhaps it's what the Earth, the sand trout and sandworms is what happened to Earth originally, and that's where they come from. But this is also based on, Sean, me not having read any of the Brian Herbert or Kevin J. Anderson books and not having done this kind of work on it, So that's kind of what we were running with, and it was just it's a theoretical exercise, I suppose. But we're just speculating on the nature of the worms, how they're connected to Arrakis. And the thing is, there's a couple of diagrams that we have on the community page, Sean, but we don't get our answers. Excuse me, I'm going to have another slug of cough medicine, folks. But the thing is, I think that Frank Herbert. I keep pointing this out to people. Frank Herbert's all of his stuff is very carefully intertwined, and it is heading places, and it's repetitive in certain ways. There's patterns, and I think that he keeps giving us all of this stuff in terms of the worms. To get this information, you have to read all 6 books of the Dune series. If you miss one of them, you'll lose something on its life cycle, I think. So that was it, really, Sean. We were speculating, and we even had suggested that if the lamprey is the right animal, Ether Prime there was suggesting a good candidate for the plant side of it would be the Venus flytrap, because of its sensitivity to vibration. It has a kind of chemical factory going on, that kind of thing, and also produces a drug to entice its prey. So just a bit of speculation, but fun nonetheless. Here, I didn't take my cough medicine. Hang on. There we go. You see, my wife takes the childproof cap off for me. So, excuse me. Just backing up a wee bit there to get the gist of it. So we had Brad saying that talking about getting pitcher plants and sundews that are in the same niche as Venus flytraps and found in sandy coastal peat bogs. Brad's down in Australia. And Ether saying that, Sean, we know Frank Herbert's idea of the sandworms is that they were an animal-plant hybrid, and we're speculating to which one. So Ether is saying that's why he suggested the Venus flytrap. They thrive in areas with poor soil content, are extremely sensitive to vibrations, and they have a cocktail of enzymes to digest their prey, and they lure their prey with a sweet nectar to trap their insects. Yeah, it's a good candidate. Ether Prime says, an interesting note about Venus flytraps. The Venus flytrap challenges the hierarchical order, so Linnaeus tried to explain it away. Sean says, I see. Curious that Leighton's idea of Vril, the coming race, was inspired by electric eels. Doc, I don't recall if you touched on this book as a scientific romance Herbert might have read. Sean, yes, actually we do. We talk about Vril, the coming race, quite a bit. If you backtrack to, let me see, the beginning of the first, it would be episodes of these videos, it would be episodes 6, 7, and 8, probably. You will find that we run with, in terms of two major inspirations on Frank Herbert's Dune series, and we pair these books, Sean, by the way, because they've got, you kind of have to bring them together. And one is, and the major influence on Dune is Samuel Butler's Erewhon, and the second book is Richard Bulwer-Lytton's Vril, or The Coming Race. And the main influence for Melange as a drug, I've discussed this back then, actually, I'm pretty sure is Vril. And there's Babs saying, howdy y'all. Howdy, Babs. Thanks for joining us. Let me just recap there. So yeah, sorry, Sean, you were saying, curious that Leighton's idea of Vril, the coming race, was inspired by electric eels. I did not know that. That's something that fell through my gap. The Vril themselves are based on frogs, tadpoles. There's a bit where he says, which I quite enjoyed reading it. If you get to it in the episode, he goes, the son of your fathers was a twat. And the word twat is a Victorian word for tadpole. So the Vril themselves are meant to be kind of descended. Again, this is for this idea of lizard people kind of. Vril's got a lot to answer for, Sean. It's a great book, by the way. And if anybody likes those kind of subterranean kind of adventures, Hollow Earth type books, I think what we would call them, like Journey to the Center of the Earth, these kind of things, Vril's right up your street. It's a great book. But in particular, Vril itself it's a genetic thing, and it's also it's an evolutionary trait, and it's a drug, and it's an energy source. And so it works on multiple different levels in the same way that Melange does. Sean, I pointed out another one in that episode was another drug that works in a similar way to Melange and Vril is Fluid Karma from Southland Tales. I don't know if anybody's seen that. I used to have it on DVD and I've lost it, but I must get another copy of it. It's very good. So yeah, we've got through. If you look at, it's all the Victorian stuff, Sean. So I think it'll be episodes 6, 7, 8. And in particular, we look at the influence of Samuel Butler's Erewhon on Dune, which is massive. And we talk about, to a lesser degree, Vril. Both books are linked to each other because both books were published anonymously at the time. So I think we have one is 1871, one is 1872, both coming out anonymously. Edward Bulwer-Lytton's a Tory MP, I think. He's a Conservative MP. He's your pen is mightier than the sword guy. They're both books that look at the discussion between Darwinian evolution and Lamarckian evolution that's going on in Victorian society at the time. Because of the similarities of the books, actually both authors were linked with the other book. And although it was not a well-kept secret that Edward Bulwer-Lytton was the author of Vril, people started thinking that he was the author of Erewhon. And because both books have been published anonymously, that's why Butler and Lytton both came out and put their own names to their books. So, but initially, the two books, it's a very interesting pair of books, actually. They're worth reading together if you're a Dune fan. But absolutely, we have talked about, and I would say it's to a lesser degree, Sean, only really because I think there's quite a lot of Vril, but I had to cut stuff out, and the simple fact is that the stuff that's about Erewhon is much, much more important. So I always keep apologizing to people about my PhD because I literally had to chuck about pretty much 100,000 words. This is pretty much all close to the entire content of it again. And sadly, I've lost a lot of it. I've still got bits and pieces. But yeah, so it's Vrill's, and of course we get Bovril from Vril. And it's got quite an interesting history. I think whenever I was doing this, I was checking my footnotes. I think I put the wrong war in, and I think I managed to correct it actually. So, so there we go. Everyone's saying hi to Babs. Pardon me, my cough medicine's making me burpy. Windy, is that the word? So yeah, Sean, it's a really important book in regards to studying Dune, but it's a great book. I'm a big fan of Vril, the coming race, and I think Vril is also responsible for, if you want to look into it, things like Vril conspiracies and the coming race, literally this kind of stuff, underground lizard people and all this. That book, I think, is responsible for an awful lot of it. And if you investigate that on the web, you might see what I mean. So there we go. So the gang's all here. Ether saying, when the Venus flytrap was first discovered, botanists considered the carnivorous plant to be a curiosity. John Ellis, an 18th century naturalist, described the plant in a letter to Carl Linnaeus. Excuse me, folks, you can tell the throat's bad, can't you? Who was the most renowned botanist of his time. Yeah, Linnaean Society. Science fiction is behind so many conspiracy theories, says Sean. Yeah. And I think science fiction has fun with conspiracy theories, Sean, as well, because then it likes to run with alternative universes and stuff like that. It seems like Herbert would have enjoyed that controversy, Ethan. I think whenever we talk about the whole, it's an argument that's put forward today by particularly, well, I wouldn't say it's an argument, but it's a viewpoint that I see whenever you get, is it creationism versus evolutionary theory, and is the idea that Charles Darwin's theory on evolution just topped up and that appeared and that was it, and it just caused an uproar. And if you actually read a little bit of the literature of the times, look at things like Erewhon and Vril, that's your kind of literary response to these arguments. But there is more than one approach to evolution, and it's an ongoing argument in Victorian society, and it's been going on a while. And so the main argument, the other argument is Lamarckian, or what we call soft inheritance. It's been around for a good while before Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace present their joint theories on. So the whole idea that it had a Victorian society in uproar isn't really true. I mean, you can see how it affected Samuel Butler, but it's there was a discussion going on, and there were sides, if you see what I mean. So it was probably heated, but it wasn't as one-sided as often is presented, I think, in modern media and modern arguments, that it was evolution by means of natural selection just turned up, and that was the arrival of evolutionary theory. It's not the case at all. And that it became an argument between people who thought that theory and people who disagreed with it because of religious beliefs. So in actual fact, Samuel Butler's Erewhon and Samuel Butler himself are just pure living proof that was not the case. And the thing about Vril, Sean, is it's presenting both of those kind of things. So the nature of Vril and the idea of the mark, it's all the Lamarckian evolution presented in that one. So it's why the two books they're so close to each other in society. But one's Darwinian, one's Lamarckian, really. And they're both looking at the arguments that are being presented to that society at that time as fresh arguments, and they're basically science fiction responses to it. And they're both excellent books, you know. Excuse me, folks. Let me just catch up. But science fiction is behind so many conspiracy theories, arguably, because if that's what conspiracy theories are, possibly these days, Sean, is like kind of science fiction, stories almost, if you see what I mean. But yeah, it seems like Herbert would have enjoyed the controversy, says Sean to Ethan. I think he would. Brad says, I'm starting to get a bit sugi lala. This is the only place that people give my excitement over the coming movie, but you all get to watch the movie over a month before I get the chance. Don't worry, Brad. Don't worry. There has to be things that you can do to mentally prep, I think you should consider rewatches of David Lynch's Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune, the TV series, Children of Dune. There's Planet Dune, that quite prep yourself by bringing other types of sci-fi, tuning in around. I don't know. There's some people who make sandworm bread online. Have you seen that, Brad? That could help. But the time will fly, sir. I think it's when the things count down. But we'll definitely try and create a bit more content for you to keep you happy up until you get to see it, Brad. I think. We'll be discussing the movie, and all I can do is sit here and blink. Well, as I said, I still haven't seen it, and we'll have to do. I suppose my last of these live streams will be on the night I go to. Well, I'll see the film, and the last one will be that night. So I'll do my best not to spoil it for anybody, and I'll try and definitely give you a bit of what I think. But once we're done with these wee live streams every night, it's been since up to the 21st, and quite a few of them. I think we've done 33 in a row. I think. So we will have to have a look at doing this again and trying to figure out some kind of format for it. If you would like to join me again, that is, if anybody's got any ideas. But I'm thinking about making it a weekly thing, or possibly twice weekly. From Bulwer Lighton. Hello to everyone. Says Fergan. Hello, Fergan. Hi, we're going rightly tonight. We're not about to shut down, so you've caught us at the right time. Thanks very much for joining us. Sean McAllister says, the coming race, though akin to us, has nevertheless acquired by hereditary transmission, etc., certain distinctions which made it a different species and certain powers which we could not attain. Now, some bodies are charged with electricity, like the torpedo electric eel, and never can communicate that power to other bodies. So I suppose the existence of a race charged with that electricity and having acquired the art to concenter and direct it in a word to be conductors of its lightning. Ether Prime, I'll come back to that in a wee second, Sean. Ether Prime saying, well, it's bedtime for me. Where'd that go? I was just reading and it moved. I'm exhausted. No worries, Ether. Good chat. I hope my proposal of carnivorous plants being the plant vector for the origin of a sandworm helps you discover the truth. Who knows, Ether? I think the truth may be unobtainable there, but we'll certainly keep putting that idea out if anybody's got ideas about what's the plant vector of the sandworms. But take it easy, Ether. All the best, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for contributing as always. Let me see, Sean, back to your point. The coming race, though akin to us, has never acquired by hereditary. It said a certain distinction makes it different and contain powers which we could not attain. Now, as some bodies are charged with electricity, like the torpedo or electric eel, and never can communicate the power to other bodies. So I suppose the existence of a race charged with that electricity. Right, the electricity, Sean, is vril, isn't it? As far as I recall. So it's saying that they're some bodies charged with electricity, like the torpedo or electric eel, can't communicate that power to others. So he's saying it's like, so it's a simile. So I suppose the existence of a race that's charged with that electricity. So that what he's talking about, what he's calling electricity, is vril itself. So it's not only a substance, it is that little, and that's a Lamarckian evolutionary trait, isn't it? As you say, the whole point is about the coming race, though akin to us, has nevertheless acquired by hereditary transmission, etc., certain distinctions. So the point is that they I think, if I can remember it rightly, that it's kind of almost like a chosen adaptation, and it's a slight evolutionary alteration. So the vril, and I think, don't they have little staffs as well? I think, Sean, it's been a wee while since I read it. But there's a quote in the wee section that I have, and they tell you that their ancestors, they're descended from frogs. And let me tell you what, hang on. Here, actually, why am I telling you to run off and look at videos? I've got it here. Bear with me. I keep forgetting, guys. I'm so daft that I've got the thing here. So give me a wee second and I'll look it up for you. Because I quite like reading it. It's funny. Let me see. So yeah, and that is pretty interesting about the two books. And as I said, we didn't really get to chat too much about vril, but big influence on Dune, I think. Let me see. It was. I don't know if you know if you've caught any of this stuff, Sean. It's worth going back and having a wee look at if you haven't, um, because it was kind of. I said Butler wasn't very religious at that point, but it was kind of Darwin's ideas on evolution that kind of, I think, wrecked his view of the universe, I suppose. Here we go. I've got it here. Right, bear with me, folks, and I shall read you this wee section. So, let me just check I've got the right section. Bingo. Okay, so the Vril-Ya are, in fact, here we go, and this is from the Ph.D. So I'll just give it to you. The author's intention centered on the curiosity of Victorian society over the differences between Darwinism, and Lamarckism, especially the Darwinian proposition that a coming race is destined to supplant our races. So the Vril-Ya are, in fact, evolved from tadpoles, and the anonymous narrator is credulous of this lineage as presented to him by F. Lynn, one of the Vril, and is no doubt similar to the incredulity experienced by Victorians in light of the implications of Darwin's theories presented in On the Origin of Species and The Descent of Man. So here's the wee quote, and this is from Vril, and I'll go on with this a wee bit in a second, because there's another wee bit that's interesting. But it says, among the pithy sayings which, according to tradition, the philosopher bequeathed to posterity in rhythmical form and sententious brevity, this is notably recorded. Humble yourselves, my descendants. The father of your race was a twat. And we have in brackets, tadpole there. Exalt yourselves, my descendants, for it was the same divine thought which created your father that develops itself in exalting you. I presume that none of your race, even in the less enlightened ages, ever believed that the great grandson of a frog became a sententious philosopher, or that any section, I will not say of the lofty Vril-Ya, but of the meanest varieties of the human race, had its origins in a tadpole. So the other wee bit, I think, is just it's to do with the nerve, etc. I've got actually, there's a wee picture of this way in the video, Sean. You'll actually, it's a wee drawn from Vril, and you'll see the little nerve on this part of the hand there. So this is just to do with let me just run it for you quickly, if you don't mind. So I'll just run it. It all runs on from this. So at the same time as presenting us with an instance of similarity to the conflict of common descent between man and apes created by Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection, Bulwer-Lytton also describes the development of a visible nerve on the hands of the Vril-Ya, which is very much in the mode of Lamarckian hypothesis of evolution. In other words, the theory of acquired characteristics or soft inheritance. So the Vril-Ya have been consciously able to alter their evolution over a period of time to facilitate their use of Vril, the wondrous fluid that is the source of all their power. This adaptation exists in the form of a nerve developed on their hands, which ultimately allows them to facilitate the staffs that they use and serve as conduits for the liquid energy. And we'll just read, this is the last wee quote from Vril, and I'll just read this for you. So it says, more remarkable than all this is a visible nerve perceptible under the skin, which starts from the wrist, skirting the ball of the thumb, and branching fork-like at the roots of the fore and middle fingers. With your slight formation of thumbs, said the philosophical young Guy, and with the absence of the nerve which you find more or less developed in the hands of our race, you can never achieve the other than imperfect and feeble power over the agency of Vril. But so far as the nerve is concerned, that is not found in the hands of our earliest progenitors, nor in those of the ruder tribes without the pale of the Vril-Ya. It has been slowly developed in the course of generations, commencing in the early achievements and increasing with the continuous exercise of the Vril power. Therefore, in the course of 1,000 or 2,000 years, such a nerve may possibly be engendered in those higher beings of your race, who devote themselves to that paramount science through which is attained command over all the subtle forces of nature, permeated by Vril. So there you go. I mean, isn't that interesting? And really think about that the whole Vril permeating all things It's very similar to Melange, and it really the whole point there is that the philosophical young Guy is making in Vril is that the Vril control their own evolution, that they've done this, and it's Lamarckian, if you see what I mean. So yeah, the books are discourses on these two types of evolution that's going on in society at the time. And again, Bulwer Lytton would have been an MP, if you see what I mean. So I kind of at the front of Victorian society and what's going on there. So it's really interesting. But yeah, check those videos out, Sean. I think you'll love it. There's a lot. It's mostly it's Samuel Butler Erewhon heavy, but we do talk about Vril and Edward Bulwer Lytton. It's a very important book in terms of Dune, but I also think it's a really good book, and as I think Erewhon's a really good book too. Let me just catch up. We were saying goodnight to Ether. Brad, Sean, I love those who are like heavy drops coming from the sky. They foretell the coming of the lightning. I name this lightning Ubermensch, Friedrich Nietzsche, thus spag Zarathustra. Oh, we're on Nietzsche again. Fergus, welcome back. Good to see you. More time to chat tonight, indeed. And we're saying goodnight to Ether. Back from the gym and not got nice cardio in. Now Dune discussion. Hi, Grimdark. Thanks for joining us. We're just having a wee quick chat about Vril and a similarity to Melange, and we were fully on the worms. We were staying quite well on topic, I thought, tonight. Getting better at this kind of thing. Brad Rose says, Doc, I'd really like to see you do a live stream discussion review of the movie after you see it. Sure, I'll be happy to do so. Very much so, and I'll do one of those things where I really don't want to spoil it for anybody, I think. So I'll choose my words carefully or something. But yeah, definitely we'll have the last episode actually that night. So I'm off to see the film pretty much at lunchtime. So we'll be back, and then we'll have our final episode at 10 o'clock on the 21st. And then we'll pop on live and have a chat with you guys and let you know how it went. And hopefully I get a free poster, I think, where I'm going to see it. Who knows? But yeah, looking forward to it. Fergus Kellick says, I read the books in a very depressed time, and the magical world of Dune put me at ease. In addition, the things mentioned in the book on politics and leaders were very impressed, as I witnessed it personally in Turkey, the country I live in. So I'm wondering why you're so interested in Dune and Frank Herbert. Is that to me personally or to everybody? I'll tell you what, everybody, let's all give Firkin an answer. Everyone, tell us what is it that makes you so interested in Dune and Frank Herbert? If you're asking me, excuse me, Firkin, all sorts of things, really. Where do you begin? I'm not too sure how to begin, but I'm a political animal and I'm a classicist. So I'd say one of my big draws for me was the wide range of myths and mythology in the Dune series. I do like intrigue, political intrigue, and I mean, what's not to like about it, I suppose. But why, if you're, I don't know. I suppose why do a PhD in it? That's taking it to a different level, isn't it? I figured it was right for me and it fitted me, and I approached it in a few different ways. And if you look at my skill set is in all of those ways. So in that sense, I'm classically, I've got a degree in classical studies and Irish studies as well, and I've got degrees in science fiction literature, would you believe, Fergus? And also I have a master's in computing and information systems, so I'm a systems guy. Though I'm not really, I'm just educated that way. I don't do that kind of work, if you see what I mean. Yeah, and I'm philosophy, obviously, with the doctorate. So that's a big part of the classical world too. So there's a lot of the ancient world and a lot of different cultures in Dune, in particular for me. But first and foremost, things that attract me like that, it's usually an overlay of myth. If you see what I mean, that's particularly for me what I like. And I said I'm working on a video actually at the minute for sort of, I've been asked to do it by my subscribers. I'm working on a video about the link of the Pelopids and it's actually the Pelopid line from Greek mythology and history and overlap of those myths on the Dune series. So that's something that'll be the first kind of fresh thing I've done on Dune in years, apart from these wee broadcasts. So that's me. I'm sure we'll figure out what everybody else what what is it that really interests you about this book, you know? But I think it works. I keep saying this. I'm starting to sound like I have catchphrases, but I think it works on so many different levels for different people. You know, it's what works for one person with Dune is probably completely different for someone else, I think, you know. But yeah, it's we do like good fantasy, science fiction, even horror should be good escapist literature. I would argue what got me into all of this kind of literature, Firkin, is what you're talking about, going into a magical world and a not a good time. It's good escapism. And I live in a society where I pretty much wish to escape my entire life. So I escape to worlds of ancient worlds and futuristic ones, I suppose, and always have done. Mm. So maybe it's mythology and escapism for me, but I think that's science fiction in general, but definitely for mythology. Let's see what you guys think. Fergus, if you want some light-hearted reading that still makes you think, I think you ought to have a look at Terry Pratchett. Yeah, if you're looking for some good escapist fiction as well, Fergus, let us know. We can all give some recommendations. Grimdark Elven Waremaster says, wasn't Emperor Shaddam a ginger? Yes, he was, as far as I remember. He's got red hair under his black helmet, isn't that right? Funny, Grimdark, funny the things you remember easily, isn't it? But that's a no problem. Yeah, he's a redhead. I am the red Ross, by the way. Once upon a time, my hair was red, I suppose. And as I said, we've been talking about the Elric jokes, but I'm sure most of you now who've read the Elric books get the weird of the red Ross at the front of the videos, as opposed to the weird of the white wolf. Sorry, the weird of the white wolf. Just a wee kind of Elric joke at the start of each episode, I suppose. But there we go. Let's see, Persian gingers sound funny for Padishah. The redhead genes all over the world. It's got some very interesting things about red-headed people in divergent ancient cultures in terms of immigrationary paths. Very interesting. Sean McAllister Branson, a great quote. Thus Speak came out after Vril Inspiration. But I'd found, what was it? We keep bringing up this. I keep saying I've got the Antichrist somewhere. It's part of another book with Nietzsche, but I found it downstairs the other day. But we keep bringing up Nietzsche. Modern philosophy, eh? Fergus saying he's read the first book, The Color of Magic. If you like it, Fergus, read on. There's a lot of them now, but there's some pretty good ones. I think Mort's a really good one. I'd say Mort's my favorite one of the early Terry Pratchett, of the early Discworld novels. Sorry. Sean McAllister says Herbert loves gingers. I opened the first few pages of Dragon the Sea, ginger main character. Pretty sure Jory X McKee character is ginger. It's something I pointed out, Sean. If you look at the main female characters in Frank Herbert's first three books, so the Dragon in the Sea, and I'm probably guessing that if we do it to the fourth book as well, but the Dragon in the Sea, Dune, and the Green Brain, they're all what you would call what's the term? An Irish colleen, red hair, green eyes, I believe. And they're all described in the same way. Little things. So you could argue that Frank had a type, I suppose, when he was typing. And I think, isn't that how Jessica's described? It's red hair and green eyes. But yes, the Emperor's a redhead too. Herbert loves gingers. I quite like that. But yeah, it's a good point, Sean. He does, actually. Something I've noticed before. And do you know something? What would be interesting, Sean, if anybody's got... I'm not going to do this, by the way, but I dare say it wouldn't take too long. You wouldn't need to get too far into each book, but hit each of his books and see if the main female character, how often is she described as a redhead with green eyes? A Jessica type, I suppose. The ginger Harkonnens in the Lynch film, I didn't see the problem. Just a bunch of gingers acting. It's really meant to be a visual cue, isn't it, to the genetic heritage? I think it's meant to be an obvious, and I think the way things are done in the film, that some things have to be simply a visual nod. I think that the original David Lynch, I love it. Still love that film. Babs Bilo. Here we go. Here's an answer for you, Firkin, from Babs. Why do we love Dune? Babs says, I love Dune for its laying bare of religious trickery. Excellent. I owe Dune for assisting me in gaining my freedom from it. Very good. Grimdark Elvenor Master says, Tolkien had an obsession with dark-haired women. Arwen and Luthien were based on his wife Edith and were dark-haired. A lot of authors tend to write about, kind of use people that they know and put them into character, I suppose, But yeah, I suppose Bab's point is religion as a control system. I owe the classical world for freeing me from it, Babs, completely and utterly. Most people have faith, and I have absolute knowledge on the matter, is the way I like to put it. So it was knowledge that freed me completely, as in no doubt at all. No doubt whatsoever about the religions of the it's as simple as that. I'm very happily one with some person who can just in the conversation I've done the work. It's just I don't have faith. I went and did the work, and I did a lot of work. I'm fascinated by religion, absolutely fascinated by this. Yeah, particularly if you look at how priesthoods and monarchies and how they operate and how they bounce off each other. Some of them are tied. It's a really interesting thing, and it goes back a long, long time. But yeah, organized religion is a control system, pretty much very similar to imperialism, within certain. In other words, the money flows in one direction and the ideology flows in the other. If you see what I mean, you can break it down to that simple level. But yeah, so for Babs, it's something that's freed you from religion, which is it is an eye opener. And was that the God Emperor that did that, Babs, or was it Paul himself? I'm wondering. But if the God Emperor doesn't open your eye to organized religion, I don't know what would. Sean says, Doc, I'm behind. Sorry, that section of Rill was fat. Oh, no worries, Sean, at all. Herbert takes the Lamarckian view then. No. Benny Gesserit and HM push themselves in directions they desire for themselves. HM. Honored Matrix. God. No, Sean, it's both. And it really is because of the influence of these books. There's a suggestion of a couple of Lamarckian things within Dune, and it's possible that one of them, in fact, applies to the Fremen. So if you do backtrack and hit the chapter on evolution that we have, Sean, which would be episodes 6 up till about I think 18 or 19. It's the biggest part of the work. We've got plenty of stuff there. Excuse me, but I would say it's a bit of both. But the entire Dune series, Sean, is an exploration on different types of evolution and in different ways that evolution. That's its biggest, most dominant theme over ecology, over the destructive messianic hero. But I hope you enjoy it when you get to it. It's fascinating stuff. I really enjoyed looking at those books in particular. And whenever I started doing this work, Sean, as I've said a couple of times, as much as I was just checking a name, Samuel Butler, who's that? And wow, slap from the Butlerian Jihad, the amount of floodgates it opened. And I'd say that Erewhon's a book and Vrill's a book that you can't hit one without, if you do any kind of slight research into either book, you'll hit the other one. It's really worth reading the two of them together. Really worth reading if you have a little sense of what's going on in society at the time. Real eye opener, excellent books, both really well written and very different. One's very much a kind of quirky political satire, a pastoral utopia. The other's more of that kind of underground adventure, but fish out of water type thing. Well, they're always fish out of water, but they're cracking books, and they're all public domain these days, I would imagine as well. If anybody hasn't read any of them, if you are, you might need a slightly different reading hat on for reading Victorian fiction. But if you don't mind displacing, getting your Victorian head on, they're easy to read, I would say. But they're worth it. They're if you're a Dune fan, you will. It's one. Big influence. Big influence. Yeah, but yeah, I do like them as books. They're really good. quite a lot of that stuff around at the time as well, Sean. By the way, we look at a whole range of, whenever we're setting up that kind of chapter as well. We're talking about the Finn the sequel fiction and the Thames Valley disaster novels as well. So there's quite a lot of literary stuff there. That's but I think, by the way, I wasn't sure if Herbert had read this when he was young. But in the other episode the other night, I was pretty certain that he discovered Butler when he read Where There's Life by Paul Bigelow Sears. So we get these little links which show you how his thinking and his research line up. Excuse me, I'm going to go for another slug of this. It's actually all the talking as well, folks, but suppose you should pose the rest of your throat when you're doing this kind of thing. I think that's enough of that stuff. I've got a big jar of honey here if it gets a bit more tickly. But I'm starting to feel a bit less congested today, I suppose, is one thing, but my throat's still tickly. So I do apologise for all my coughing and spluttering. Let's have a wee look and catch up, folks. So, Sean, we were just saying, Doc, I'm behind. Sorry, that section, but it was fascinating. No, Herbert take, yeah, so it's both. I think it's a bit of both. And but yeah, the Bene Gesserit other matters. Every single group is a divergent evolutionary path, and he really is opening our eyes to multiple things, I think. Brad saying, in regards to, for me, it's a fully imagined, for Dune, what attracted you to it? For me, it's a fully imagined world where there's ongoing revelations to the dynamics. There are a few answers for you, Fergan. Let's see. Sean McAllister, is genetic engineering in the Dune universe instantiating Lamarck? The BT being recent examples. The worms suggest earlier efforts, don't they? BT, right? Benny Time. Right. Sorry, got to work on acronyms sometimes, Sean. Is genetic engineering in the Dune universe instanting Lamarck? The Bene Tleilax being recent examples, the worms suggest earlier efforts, don't they? The Bene Tleilax, a lot of their DNA stuff. I get, yeah. We have an episode on that back there too, Sean, but it's just me trying to rack my brains while thinking about this. If you go back and have a look at that chapter, the books, the stuff that we were talking about, sets up the whole evolutionary thing, the Lamarckian, Darwinian, the connection between particularly Butler and Edward Bulwer-Lytton's Vril. Then we actually look at the relationship between Dune and these books, and then we take how all of that stuff's applied to the different groups. We work at first technology, evolution with technology, then evolution within human groups, and we have one on the Bene Tleilax there, and then we have with individuals. So I'm not sure about the Lamarck. Just trying to rack my brains, Sean. I'm kind of heads in a different topic slightly tonight, but I can't remember what I've said back there. But I'm thinking that there's aspects of both within it, but I couldn't remember the details now. But if you do have a look at those episodes, you'll get, it's basically me with my full mental head also. You'll get the information there. Sometimes not everything pops into my head. I'm sorry, Sean. Saying that, I do have a copy of the thing. I have to keep remembering that. Let me see. Tleilaxu. See, I think the Bene Tleilax take it into a whole, all over the place. And again, all of these different groups and their technologies evolve too. I'm trying to think. The example of Lamarckian evolution that I was thinking on was actually the Fremen. Sean, it was to do with their intestines. There's a comment, and again, if you go to the episodes, I discuss, and it's Lamarckian and Darwinian aspects. So, and it's kind of, I think that's the episode where we look at the Fremen and the Sardaukar together. Have a look at that one. But there's loads of stuff there. But I think the example that I gave, I think if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't the Bene Tleilax looked at. Though of course we've got an example of all male society that's subjugated its females, and it has a part of its society that are genetic mules. That's you get all sorts with the Bene Tleilax. Another answer for Furkan there is Grimdark saying, I love Dune for its world building, its mythopia, and I wish more authors would reference it, would use it for reference. As a benchmark, really, isn't it? I think we said that would use it. Yeah, it's. Would you like more authors to write in that world, Grimdark? Is that what you mean there? That's interesting. Other than the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. Sean said, I honestly think Herbert is the most important of the 20th century. Hemingway, Steinbeck, etc. Herbert, wow, it's putting him in pretty high company. I think he's pretty important. I think there's a couple that I think would. Steinbeck's a really important writer, I think, as a chronicler of American life, and but particularly he's an author of a very particular period that nobody else seems to chronicle. He's the Dust Bowl writer to me. Doc says, Brad, but yeah, you're putting him in high company, Sean. And why not? I'm sorry. Doc says, I'm sorry I keep bringing up Nietzsche. I'm a bit of a fanboy. No problem, Brad. I do not bother. When my friends ask me why I'm so interested in Malik, and says that it feels good not to feel alone. Well, absolutely. I don't know. It's the difference between being alone and being lonely, isn't it? It depends on how. I'm quite a person who's very happy in his own skin, and like company to a degree as well. But I quite like being on my own a lot. I think my wife's a bit the same. We like our own company in some ways, There's Babs giving just a reminder that both Erewhon and Vril are available as LibriVox recordings here on YouTube. Thank you, Babs. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Erewhon and Vril, check them out together. Not a bother about the Nietzsche. I'm not a fan of Nietzsche at all. That's to the point where I wouldn't actually. I've read a little bit and wouldn't waste my time reading anymore, if you see what I mean. But each to their own. Each to their own, Brad. I mean, yeah, he's an interesting enough. I think there's something I saw on. Maybe somebody was pointing it to me that there's a film about Nietzsche, and is it Nietzsche and Wagner? I was having a wee look nosy at that. I've just caught a bit of it. Thought I might have a look at it. Based on talking to you, Brad. So there you go. You've got my sort of Nietzsche interest on a wee bit. But there's Karen saying hi. Hello, Karen. How are you? All things worms and spice and anything to do with the worms and the mystery of the worms and anything at all. But we're, as usual, we're staying reasonably on track. We've got onto a little bit of the evolution. But thanks very much for joining us. I mean, other you meet. I was just asking Grimdark. He was saying that we'd all been having a wee conversation there about what is it that we really each of us likes about Dune in particular. And Grimdark had just said, "I love Dune for it." Had said, "I love Dune for its world building, and I wish more authors would use it for reference." And I was kind of asking, "Do you mean?" Would you prefer more authors to write in that world? But Grimdark catching up with that. See, these wee timestamps are handy. Actually says, I mean other authors using Dune as a template or basis. Brad Rose says, you mentioned cane toads in tonight's episode with global warming. With global warming, it is lengthening their breeding season and the time that they are active, also making areas they thrive and expand. So that problem with the cane toads, Brad, is now evolving and changing in the new climate, and they're the obvious example, I think, of an invasive species. I thought one of the most famous ones that I could think of, so I quickly kind of did and again, you see the stuff there, the work on it, the map of Australia and how this species moves. So I would be very interested actually to get a modern map and put it up next to that and see where it is in 2021. Thank you very much for that, Brad. That's really interesting. I like when bits of this work kind of pop up in the real world and we can, that there's warnings about ecology and stuff that I suppose even maybe 10 years ago, some of this wasn't relevant, but we can see Frank Herbert's work being very relevant now, Furkan Kellick says there's a saying in Turkey, left from Ottoman. The saying is, excuse me, left over from the Ottomans. The saying is, Nevi Sah. Let me try this again, sorry. Nevi Sasina Munhasir. Nevi Sansina Munhasir, if I did that right. Excuse the pronunciation, Fergus. This word is said for those who have a very different and unique character. I think Herbert is this kind of man. Ah, Nevi, what, interesting. Nevi Sasina Munhasir. Interesting. I wonder how that translates. Is it one of those words that, like, we talk about certain words from certain cultures, Firkin, that there's a particular word in a culture for it, but to translate it into your own language, you need probably a sentence or two, things like Schadenfreude. And we talked about, was it the Irish word is the crack? I would say to everybody, thanks for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed the crack. The crack is just, all the banter, the goodwill, the conversation, all of it, and just the ambience, all of that thing, the whole evening is the crack, and you interacting in it is the crack as well, if you see what I mean, And I'll show you that we call it, that's how we spell it there. That's the crack. So good banter and entertainment, if you see what I mean. But yeah, Herbert is quite he's a very idiosyncratic. Would that be a good word? Man, Fergus, I think. Sean McAllister says, Doc, I need your dis in document form. I feel like I'm missing things listening rather than reading. I need highlighters to go through your thoughts. No problem, Sean. If you send me an email to sciencefictionstation@gmail.com, and if you put in a request for thesis in the subject heading, Sean, I'll email it to you. I've got an email. I have a PDF copy, so that's no problem if you would like it. You're kind of getting the thesis in the subtitles as well, but it's pretty much every word that you hear is the entire thing. The odd word just maybe for bad phrasing or something, but there we go. But if you'd like a copy, Sean, let me know. And same for anybody. If anybody wants a PDF of the Ph.D. So that's Evolution, Ecology, and the Messianic Hero in Frank Herbert's Dune series, send me an email to sciencefictionstation@gmail.com with copy of thesis or something like that in the subject title, and I'll fire you a copy, folks. Okay. Let's just catch up. No problem. Thanks, Fergus. Karen says, I hope you've enjoyed the answers to what people are getting out of Dune. By the way, Fergus, it's quite a range of different things, I thought. Maybe Karen's got an answer there too. By the way, for Karen, we were just asking everybody, what is it that really attracts you to the Dune series? If you want to give us we've kind of all popped up an answer there. Anybody else wants to give an answer? Karen's saying, how many days to your screening? 5, I think. Well, the 16th. This Thursday coming. So looking forward to it. For Karen, approximately a month and a half. For me, says Brad. Sorry, not for Karen. Brad saying Karen, approximately a month and a half for me. So Brad's in Australia, and we all have sympathy for Brad because they're not going to get to see it until the 2nd of December, which is a bit shit. That's a bit shit, mate. Sorry, Brad, but it's a bit crap. I genuinely feel for you guys there. It really is a shame. The whole world will have seen something, and because of your geographic situation, you're going to be so far behind it than everybody else. I saw, was it Quinn from Quinn's Ideas, and was putting up. I think he's having quite a hard time lamenting that half the planet's going to review this film before him, and I think he's absolutely gutted about it, and I feel sorry for him because he's got such enthusiasm. You really, I think somebody was saying they should have flown him out to a film or something by now. But yeah, it is interesting the way the film's traveling around the world, and some people are having a great chat about it and are going and seeing it 3 or 4 times, like Carol. Oh dear. You don't feel sorry for him. I'm sure he's doing fine, but look, it's his thing, isn't it? He's been doing it for a while, and I think he must be ready to explode. Is kind of, if you see what I mean, that's kind of why I feel sorry for him. I think the anticipation for him must be ridiculous. He's like I'm personally, if I didn't see it in the cinema, I wouldn't bat an eyelid, to be honest with you. Oh dear you, but you do for everyone else. There's also a Dune mockbuster coming out this year from the Asylum to no one's surprise. Yeah, is that was it Planet Dune that we were talking about the other day? Is that Sean Young in that? I think. Did I see Sean Young in that? I'm pretty sure I did. And that's Channy from Dune. So cash in. Why not? But does anybody know when that film's coming out, or where we can see it? Because I quite like to watch it. I really like cheesy B movies, if you see what I mean. I did enjoy watching the trailer. Planet Dune, I believe. Is that the one that you're talking about? The Dune mockbuster? Is that the term? Grimdark. But yeah, I look forward to all sorts of things like that. Has anybody got any more questions on the sandworms or their excretions, the Melange, just anything at all to do with the worms or Arrakis, or Dune or science fiction? Fire away, folks. I'm enjoying the crack on this really miserable night outside here. It is Sean Young. I thought I saw. Sometimes you're kind of just paying attention to the trailer a wee bit, and you don't tend to notice who's in it. One of those things. But I pretty much going, wasn't that? That's right, Rachel from Blade Runner as well. Sean Young, yeah. Carolyn says, I just found it a bit funny when Quinn tweeted about not being invited to any early screenings, while still having his pinned tweet at the top of what was essentially calling Warner Brothers awful. Yeah, I suppose it's. I do understand. That's kind of what I thought was a bit funny about it, but I do feel sympathetic from it. It's just so much enthusiasm. I think, but as I said, I think he's going to explode. Just if he doesn't get to see that film in a good way, But yeah, was it don't bite the hand that feeds you, if you see what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a wee bit funny actually. Him sort of going, I don't, take me to the film, But I think it's genuinely. I think he's no. I really do like his enthusiasm for Dune, and it's a bit like Brad there. I think America gets it the 22nd of this. No, sorry, the 22nd of this month. I think so. Is America and Canada on the 22nd of October, and then that's that big gap up until Brad in Australia. But we'll have to do something for Brad actually. Whenever you get to see Dune, Brad, we'll do a live. You let us know at some point that you've seen the film, and we'll do a live broadcast where we can all discuss it. How's that? I think that would be good. And Carol said you're getting it on Wednesday. Yeah, Thursday lunchtime here. So, but you've already seen it by not being over the border. Are you going again, Carol? Is that you've already seen it 3 times in a different country? Yeah, still get to see it again. So you are going again. So this will be time number 4. I am looking forward to it. As I said, it's been a long time since I've been to the cinema, and I think if it's, I think for the non-Dune fans, that the way the film seems to be, to me anyway, being promoted, is that it's very much being presented as a love letter to the cinema, as much as it's a love letter to Dune in some senses, Brad says Quinn has enough fans they should have set up a GoFundMe thing. We're gonna just I suppose you can always hop on a plane. It's not that easy to travel these days, is it? I suppose. But depends on what lengths you're prepared to go for something, I think. But made for the big screen isn't just a marketing fee. It genuinely is. Yeah, and you've had much praise for the film, Karen. So yeah, I do like something that's a really good visual experience in a film. I was trying to think of films that I had seen that really were just fantastic on the big screen. And I had thought, the last one that I really enjoyed, I suppose, was kind of Mad Max Fury Road for a different, more of a visceral experience. But it was very, very pretty film as well. But I was going back and thinking, when's the last time, a really good cinematic experience? And I would you believe it or not, guys, I remembered that it was the last time I got a cinema to myself, actually. And I don't want to discuss it too much, but anyway, I wanted to go see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon in the cinema, and it didn't even appear in the cinemas here the first time round, and it managed to come back briefly after its Oscar win. So yeah, I managed to go see that with just myself and the entire cinema. In the original, is it Mandarin? I think. So not an English dub or anything like that. And just I thought Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon on a big screen is extremely beautiful film to watch. You know, just wow, this is a really nice, a really good film actually as well. Um, just all round great film, but very. I've seen it several times since on the small screen. It's a very different experience, just not as good at all. You know. Let's see, just to catch up, folks. I've Grimdark Elven Lore Master Quinn is at least aware of your existence, right? Oh, I believe so. Yeah. Um, Brad Rose actually stuff Quinn. I should do go fun for me for myself to see it June earlier. Yeah, Brad. Yeah, hop on a plane, mate, and fly to Britain, or where somewhere closer, possibly. But yeah, that's a good idea, Brad. If it comes to, wonder could you see it on a plane, or something like that, or a boat, international waters. I wonder what's going on there. I remember seeing Judge Dredd, the really bad Sylvester Stallone one on between England and the Netherlands. So Karen saying, I'm not. Let me just catch it. At least not in this. Oh, sorry. Just to run your thread together there, Karen. It's made for the big screen. It isn't just a marketing phrase, at least not in this case, and not just the overwhelming visual compositions. The sound editing is insane. Needs the most immersive sound system you can get. Wow. Excellent. So yeah, sound, vision, the whole thing. You know. Matthew Smith, what's your view on Boris Johnson passing away from a non-fatal car crash? What? Oh, I hope he survived. I have no idea what you're talking about, Matthew. Is he dead? Bear with me. Or I don't see him. What's your view on Boris Johnson passing away from a non-fatal car crash? I hoped he survived. You've got me a bit confused there, Matthew. I'm not sure. Boris Johnson passing away from a non-fatal. Is that something that's in one of the papers, one of those British newspaper oxymorons, or a BBC? How can you pass away from a non-fatal crash? But I don't see anything about him being dead on the news. We had an MP who was murdered in Britain today, Sir David Amos, I believe. Excuse me. Oh, hang on. So you've lost me a bit there, Matthew. I'm not too sure what you mean. Passing away, but it sounds like an oxymoronic headline. If that's what you mean, I hope he survived. But no, haven't heard anything about that at all. Grimdark says MP David Amos was stabbed the other day and assassinated. Yeah. Carol says we interrupt your Dune stream for some news. All right, rest in peace despite being a Tory. Yeah, murdering people's not good. Firkin saying, I have to go, guys. Take care of you. Thank you very much, Firkin. Look after yourself. And thanks very much for joining us. Brad Rose says, thanks, Doc, but seriously, don't hold back for me. No point holding back for one person, especially when there's good momentum. Oh, it's not about holding back, I suppose. It's you can discuss things without saying things, can't you? But no, just saying we could do something. Absolutely, we can. As I said, we could do something for whenever you get to see it, Brad. Yeah. As I said, I'll be doing these one a night. The plan was to do it up to the 21st. So and it was really to do a question and answer on each of these videos up until the film came out. You know, and I thought it would be a good way of making, if anybody had, you know, issues, problems, or didn't understand anything in the videos, that here I am, go ahead and ask. And I thought it would be a good thing to do. So, I mean, we're talking about keeping this up as part of the science fiction station. You know, guys, I don't know what you think, but I've been thinking about doing a wee weekly, science fiction something or other. I think no matter what, there's always a place for Dune, and I think, to be honest with you, kind of hard for me to get away from it sometimes. So I don't know. I think I'm setting up a science fiction station Friday or something, and having a go at bringing some, yeah, having a chat about a few different things. But I quite enjoy doing this. But I certainly don't think I could keep it up for 7 days a week for a whole year. My throat's definitely at a bit of a point from doing it for, I don't know how many days we've done now. But we'll have done, I think we'll have done about 30, 33 of these in total by the time we get to the 21st, maybe. Sean says, a question on the worms. Do you think Shiana, had she become a symbiont with the sand trout, having encountered Leto II in some way? Was Leto II, as part of the worm, able to re-emerge as the Bene Gesserit feared? What do you think that they would have looked like the worm taking over Leto, like other memory? Just backing up. Was it Leto II was part of the worm able to re-emerge? Oh, hang on. Sorry, I missed one, Sean. Question on the worms. Do you think Shanna becomes symbiont with the sand trout, having encountered Leto II in some way? I'm really fuzzy on those characters, Sean, being completely honest with you. Is this the girl that learns the kind of rhythmic dance, if you see what I mean? Because, I am very fuzzy about that. I get Siona and Shiana, etc., mixed up, and it's because I haven't read them so long. And it really is just down to the similarity of their names, if you see what I mean. If Babs is quite up to date on that stuff, I think, as well. Tends to sort of know this stuff a lot better than me if it's God Ember and the last two books. But had she become a symbiont with the Sandra? I don't think so. If that's the gist of your question. And if I might be mixing that character up, was Leto II, as a part of the worm, able to re-emerge as the Bene Gesserit feared? What do you think that would have looked like the worm taking over Leto, like other memory? As a part of the worm, able to re-emerge as the Bene Gesserit feared. Well, if I get the gist of your meaning, Sean, was Leto II as part of the worm? There is what's called, whenever he goes into the river and all this little sand trout come out, etc. Each one, this is one of his 4 deaths, as he puts it, but each one of them from that point on has what's described by Herbert as a pearl of his awareness in it. And it's their sentient, so the God Emperors and all the worms, I think, after that, kind of observing but unable to act, I think, is like a kind of scattered consciousness, which kind of links into that sense of, what we call the divided God, if that's what you mean, Sean. Karen says, in regards to what do you like about Dune, I'm not sure I can pinpoint it to specifics, but for example, I really like that all of the weirder elements of Dune can be interpreted in grounded ways. That's a good way of putting it, Carol. I think that's an excellent answer. That was for Firkin, who was asking. I think he's away there, but was asking. He just wanted to know. He was telling us what he kind of got out of Dune and why it meant so much to him. He wanted to know what we all got out of it. So it's been an interesting little exercise just going around the room. Sean says, was it possible and intended by Herbert? Were it possible and intended by Herbert, is that a new Janus figure? Oh, it's quite interesting. Sorry, that's my doggies barking. Everybody's just coming home there. Quite possibly, and something about it depends. I'm going to say depends on how you look at the books, and I have to add that it would depend on how the last book worked out. But sometimes we talk about the first Dune trilogy and the second Dune trilogy, and it's I think we talked about this, that they're really like pairings that overlap. So really, Dune and Dune Messiah kind of go together. Children and Dune Messiah kind of go together, if you see what I mean. And Children of Dune and God Emperor kind of go together. There's a big gap. Then we have the 2 Bene Gesserits. So if there were 7 books, God Emperor Dune would be the middle one, if you see what I mean. So that looking back, looking forward, there's tons of Janus pairings in it, but yeah, absolutely could be, yeah. And I think if you think about it, you get Worms to Leto II to Worms again, very, very much so, yeah. And I think there's multiple Janus pairings, but no bother there, absolutely. Sure. I think Janus pairings are all over the place, and if you start, even you'll probably spot others. There's probably others that I haven't seen as well. Like there's multiple skills that might seem supernatural on the surface, but are mostly rooted in something real and just pushed to the extreme. It was the girl with the dance. Yeah, something to do with that's the whole rhythm, chaos patterns and stuff like that. Last two books, not everyone's favorites, Sean. I think quite a few people are quite fond of them, Sean. I quite like them, but they're furthest away in my memory, if you see what I mean. Did you know Frank Herbert picked the name Harkonnen out of a California phone book? I did, Grimdark. I think it's on there somewhere. And it's a Finnish surname. And he spelled it wrong. Or if it's not spelled wrong, it's probably actually just a localized variation over time, if you see what I mean. Shai Hulud to Shaitan. Well, to Shai Hulud again, isn't it? So I suppose then ultimately the last worms that are escape Arrakis after the planet's destroyed, they have a part of the God Emperor, Chris Life says, hi, your channel is addictive. Wow. Thank you very much, Chris Life. Addiction is not what we were going for, but I hope you enjoy it. So I suspect sandworms and their life cycle is based slightly on silkworms and the history of its product, silk. Silk was the spice. Excuse me. That's a very interesting point, Chris Life, and I would agree to a degree, yet that there's multiple bases there. But we pointed out earlier on that we think that the sandworms are heavily based on the sea lamprey. But that whole thing is actually really good. And it works very well with the worms as well. So the lamprey in particular has a particular the lamprey has a particular life cycle that kind of lines up with the worm. But we were talking about how the worm is not just an animal; it's an animal-plant hybrid. But yeah, the silkworms and the history of the spice. The silk. I think we talked a bit about the Silk Road a few episodes back, actually. In terms of the ancient world. So absolutely, your Silk Road is your goal. Could be your golden path, Chris Life. There you go. But yeah, excellent. Thank you very much for making that point. Commodities, isn't it? As much as the spice must flow, the silk must flow. And silk's a fantastic commodity if you think about it in terms of the different things that you can do with it. But yeah, that's a very interesting point. Thank you very much. Brad says, I'll be interested to hear what the voice sounds like in the new movie. Yeah. Especially with Karen saying how good the soundscape is. Now, am I wrong, or did David Lynch's Dune not win an Oscar for Best Sound? Or is that a bit of a madness from me? Let me just have a wee quick look. Or maybe I did. Maybe that's just some nonsense that popped into my head. Let me see. Accolades. No, sorry, it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Sound for Bill Varney, Steve Maslow, Kevin O'Connell, and Nelson Stoll. Film on a Stinker's Bad Movie Award. Sorry, I actually thought that the original Dune had won an award for its sound, because I think the sound in the David Lynch one's fantastic, and the whenever you get to hear the voice there, it's excellent. I really liked it. So it's definitely something I'm looking forward to hearing. Let me just catch up here, folks. But yeah, Karen saying the soundscape is really good. I can't. Yeah, it's those little nuanced details that we all really want to see, isn't it? Oh, pardon me. Karen says, I have a Swedish friend who instantly recognized Harkonnen as Finnish, but doesn't like how it's mispronounced. I mispronounced this, laughing at it. The new movie does it correctly, unlike the 1984 one. Harkonnen, as far as I know, has got two umlauts and their direction within language. So it's Harkonnen, as far as I'm concerned. And that's because of the umlauts. They give direction on how to pronounce a word. So, but I've got a Northern Irish accent, and I kind of picked it up. So my accent can be a wee. Well, I don't actually have a Northern Irish accent completely, but it's a bit harsh when I say it. So I just kind of rolled with that one. But it should. I think as much as people going Harkonnen like that, and myself, I would just say Harkonnen. I think that's closer, but it should be a Harkonnen like that. But I'm Northern Irish, and the way we say things will be different anyway. So to me, I'm pronouncing it right, but I know, if you see what I mean, I'm trying to be harsh on the A and the O. But yeah, the lilt that you get within different, dialects and nuance is always going to be different. It's very different around here. People 6 miles away from here, some of them you'd think they were speaking a different language, and it's English. Excuse me. Oh, I must have missed your comment there. Prior to that, Sean said they had no settled identity with the Bene Gesserit, seeing them across the universe. Maybe they require new identities. Was that the worms you were talking about? I think in the last 2 books, that is. So, Swedish. Yes, indeed. So the Harkonnen, yeah, but as I pointed out recently, guys, I'll tell you something, okay? How we pronounce things, regardless of when you get pronunciation guides, how you pronounce something depends on the shape of your mouth, how many teeth you have, well, all sorts of things. And a lot of people go, you must say this. It's no. You say it a certain way to get the sense of the word, but how all of us pronounce words is completely different, And it is, yeah, you're depending on your palate, the amount of teeth. There's so many factors about how you will pronounce something, regardless of how you're told to pronounce it. We were talking about the word film, the way I say film, and I'm sure a lot of you just go, it's a film like that or something. I can't even do that. The M has to run with me. It's a Northern Irish quality, I suppose, but we'll just say movie. But if you're going to see a film, if you see what I mean, you can correct me all you like on how to say the word film, but I'm not going to be able to say it any other way because I don't want to, I suppose. But it's just the natural lilt to the way people speak locally here. I mean, it's the same all over the world, I think. Everybody's going to pronounce it really in an individual way to a certain extent. It's been having little fights over it and stuff like that sometimes with people. You see people getting quite upset about these things, how to pronounce it. That's kind of why I think it was something like was it possibly Nerd Cookies, I think, was getting a bit of grief over it, and I just made that point on a comment. I thought it would just diffuse the situation. Everybody pronounces things differently, and there's so many factors in it, But then you probably get that then carry on with the Finnish people are going, those Swedish people never pronounce our names correctly, if you see what I mean. Sometimes there are weird cultural ways to spelling within the English alphabet, I suppose. Excuse me. My throat's so bad tonight, so tickly. Hang on. I wasn't going to take any cough medicine, but anymore, but sod it. There you go. Excuse me. But I don't think I'll run on too much longer, folks, because I'm finding this quite a bit tricky. So I'll try and get through. Let's see. But it's been a good banter tonight. I don't really want to head off, but I don't want to just end up coughing all over the screen. Okay, so Karen says, excuse me, not to give too much away, but the voice has more than one kind of portrayal in the movie. I'd like to say more about which one I prefer and why, but I'd stop there for now. Yeah, I'd imagine each character who uses the voice, it would be different based on their own voice, if you see what I mean. The Bene Gesserit have a rationalist, practical view of the worms. Perhaps they would reconstitute Shai Hulud to wear some of the mythic power that comes with that name. Well, who's to say the whole Shai Hulud, Shaitan thing isn't part of the Missionaria Protectiva? You see, Brad saying the Bene Gesserit myth seeding, was it all from one united mythology or disconnected planet to planet? It's from the Missionaria Protectiva, isn't it? It's a manual, as far as I understand, Brad, that the Bene Gesserit have constructed over the years, and that they sow different seeds on different planets, but they're dependent on, I suppose, the nature. So we get the sense from whenever they talk about it in Dune that the Kwisatz Haderach myth, if you like, the Lisan al-Ghib, etc., is sown on different planets, but that's one that they keep for planets with particularly bad environments, I think, because Jessica goes, whenever she finds out about, was it the Lisan Ghib, oh my god, they planted that one here, I think she says, this must be a terrible place. Isn't that something like that in the book? So yeah, I think let's see, just to catch up. Brad saying the Bene Gesserit myth seeding, was it all? Oh, sorry, that was just your question there. From one united mythology or disconnected planet to planet. Um, I think it's got to do. It's all stuff from the Great Convention. I think. Karen says the way I understood it, the Bene Gesserit see variations of religions based on what seems appropriate for the society or culture already on it. Karen saying such a tease. Thanks, me. Yeah, and remember the Great Convention is it gets rid of certain religions, and I would say that I think I actually got an answer to my question. By the way, why aren't the Fremen? Why are the Fremen on the run? And my answer actually completely baffled me. Um, but the reason why they're on the run is because you get, I believe, the Great Convention forbade the Hajj, sorry, and that's what gets the Fremen. The persecution begins, I believe. But then I can't understand if they can't, undertake the Hajj. Why do they leave planet? But that may have something to do with Earth, if you see what I mean. So their myths are based on all of the religions that have signed up to the Great Convention, if you see what I mean, which is a fair mishmash of humanity. So yeah, it'd be very universal myths, I think, or universal range of them. But I couldn't say for certain. It seems like the first trilogy is disconnected. The final trilogy is united in the mythos of Shiana who can control the worms. Yeah, my memory is really poor on that at the minute, Sean. And I'm working my way through the Dune books at the minute, just about to finish the first one. Shiana who can control the worms. Yeah, that's the girl that can dance, and it's like a language. Is it something to do with her genes? How she's been her genes from? Is it where did her genes come from? Are they from Siona or something like that? But it's the rhythm, isn't it, that controls the worms obey her. And if you think about walking without rhythm, and one other one, guys, is that the planet Arrakis means the dancer. So in terms of what you're saying, Sean, Shiana who dances controls the worms. There must be some kind of connection there, I think. Quite an important one, I would say. It's a bit like maker, the word poetry or poesis. Somebody was saying that world building in Dune is their favorite thing. Mythopoeia. So the word poesis in Greek is basically it's the verb to make. So poetry is kind of anything made. Little makers. There's loaded terms to do with the worms, the planet itself, Arrakis, the dancer, and the fact that dancing rhythm. Who knows? Because it's the inscrutability of Frank Herbert sometimes, isn't it, guys? We just can't see it, But we'll be keeping. Brad says, "I'll be keeping an ear out for it." Yeah, it's funny how good. I think it's what you were saying, Karen. That if you went into the film, you'd be that busy paying attention to the nuances that's you get to enjoy it better the second time. You'll be going, there's the voice, there. Pronunciations change after 20,000 years. They do indeed. They do indeed. As is a Brad Rose, in a good cinema, you'll hear it with your whole body. Can't be all made. Brad saying, I have less teeth than Shane McGowan. Pronouncing some words is a bloody. I think Shane got a new set of chompers, didn't he? Definitely. Brad said, on invasive species, look up the impact of the crown of thorns, starfish, on the Great Barrier Reef. That's interesting. I like starfish. I think they're interesting. Crown of thorn. That's a name. I will do. Thank you for that. Crown of thorn starfish. All sorts of. I think nature's under full attack at the minute, But listen, guys, I'll tell you what. I'm going to have to cut. We'll have to cut it a day. I can nearly talk. We'll have to call it a day, I'm afraid, because my throat is so bad. And it really is just shredding here at the minute. And I still have another 5 of these to go. So I'm hoping that I'm actually not going to lose my voice or anything like that before we're done. But I'll get the lockets and the honey in and stuff like that, So I'll say goodnight. I'll just run through your last few comments here before doing so. But yeah, I will have a look at that. The Crown of Thorns. Thank you very much, Brad. Karen says maybe the sandworms are just starfish on revenge for being made fun of by humans for thousands of years. And Granddaughter saying good night, and thanks for the stream, Karen. Saying Doc, thank you for the stream, Doc. Thank you, Karen. Well, listen, guys, thank you very much. So tomorrow we're going to have a look at those two naughty boys, the Kynes family, I believe. And this is the point where we'll really get to look at these guys in detail and what they do to the Fremen before actually moving on to see how they use the Fremen and how the Fremen work as geomorphic agents. So we're on our way down towards the end, and then we'll have, once we're finished with that, I think we do have a look at, we have the banquet scene, and then we'll just wrap it up with the kind of the final very ecological transformations of the planet Arrakis. And then we'll present, then I'll be going to see the film, and then we'll come back and present you my conclusions on that night. So in the meantime, guys, I'll see you all again tomorrow night at 10 o'clock for the episode, and hopefully you can all join me for the live chat, and I'll try and work on the throat in the meantime. So once again, thanks a lot for joining us. Take care of yourselves no matter where you are, and all the best and good night. Take care now. Bye-bye.